Hello citizens, this is David Collins. I am a candidate for the United States Senate from the state of Texas on the Green Party ticket in the year 2012. I have been working with the Green Party pretty much since it was founded here in Texas in the year 2000. I should say since the state party was founded, because the Green movement has roots much deeper and wider and longer ago than that. It really dates back to the 1960s and 70s, and I can guarantee you it didn't start in Texas. It actually got started in places like New Zealand and West Germany. Now, the Green Party is on the ballot in the state of Texas thanks to some valiant petition signature gathering from a couple of years ago and a valiant run by one of our members who ran for comptroller in 2010 and garnered more than 5% of the vote. That 5% to us Greens is a magical number here in the state of Texas, because that's what is required for us to maintain our ballot access as a minor party. In fact, even if one of the major parties didn't get more than 5% of the vote in any statewide race, they wouldn't be able to run without having to gather petition signatures. But the odds of that, even in this weird political climate, are a little bit steep. Now, here's the way this all shakes out. I am running for the United States Senate partly because there's very little danger that I might actually win the race. It could happen. I'd love to have a job like that. I'd love to make the money that a U.S. Senator makes. But the money I would be making would be strictly the salary of a U.S. Senator. I wouldn't be one of those people who'd be chasing down these high-ticket speaking engagements from large corporations. In fact, in the Green Party, we don't accept contributions of any kind from corporate entities or even from labor unions. We accept donations to our campaign war chests, peace chests, only from individuals and families. That's just the way we roll, and the way it has been since there has been a Green movement. Just to let you know how this race is going to go as far as the calendar is concerned, the general election comes up on the 6th of November, the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November. We do not have a primary here in the state of Texas, not for the Greens. We just don't do that. So the big parties will have their big fun on May 29. We will have our state convention just outside San Antonio on the weekend of the 9th of June. And that's where the nominees will be selected for statewide offices, such as the Texas Railroad Commission and the Texas Supreme Court. Now, the office I'm running for happens to be a statewide office too, United States Senator. We will also be nominating our delegates to the National Convention, which will be in Baltimore in July. And that's where the National Green Party is going to pick its presidential nominee. That presidential nominee will not be on the ballot in all 50 states, sad to say, but the number of states is increasing, and at least millions and millions of people across this great land will have a chance to vote for whoever the nominee might be. What are the issues of the Green Party here in Texas? Glad you asked. We have tons of them, and the list just seems to be getting bigger all the time. When it comes to Texas, we are, at least to the outside world, once they get past the stereotypes of people riding horses down Main Street, the energy capital of the Western world. Houston in particular is known for being, if not the home, then a home of some of the largest energy companies. Energy is going to be the deciding factor for how our future takes shape. What sort of economy will we have? What sort of energy economy? How will we power all of these wonderful gizmos that we've got accustomed to having? Especially in light of the fact, not theory, but fact, that worldwide oil production either is peaking or has already peaked, as evidenced by the fact that now these energy exploration companies have to dig deeper, drill farther, and go to more extremes such as Canadian tar sands to produce fossil fuels. The Green Party's position is, as it has been since the beginning, that it's time to wean ourselves from the fossil fuel diet. We need to start building the alternative energy society as soon as possible, if not sooner. That means we're going to be looking at a whole panoply of alternatives: solar, wind, perhaps even geothermal, and to a limited degree hydroelectric power. How are we going to power our vehicles? Well, the good thing is if you were to convert your automobile fleet to electric, you could plug it into a socket which would have as its power source any number of possible fuels, including the above ones that I just mentioned, solar, wind, geothermal, etc. It doesn't have to come from fossil fuels, and it certainly doesn't have to come from nuclear power plants, which is something most Greens are opposed to also. There's energy. There's, well, think about the 4 pillars of the Green movement. We have environmental wisdom. The energy economy is all about that, among other things. There's grassroots democracy. We would like to see some of these ridiculous laws that are making it more difficult for people to vote overturned. And furthermore, we'd like to make our politics more small d democratic. One of the ways we're going to do that is make it so that instead of winner-take-all voting, we could have some sort of single transferable or other type of instant runoff voting, which would save municipalities, counties, and states a lot of money on those costly runoffs where only about 5 to 10% of the people show up to vote anyway. Think about nonviolence, one of the other pillars. We would quickly draw down our current large-scale involvement, not just in Iraq and Afghanistan, although the Iraq business is mostly over. We'll also be trying to phase out bases in countries all over the world, including, some of the flashpoints. We no longer need nearly the military presence in Europe that we might have thought we needed a couple decades ago. There's a lot of places where people just don't want us, and we have no business being. Why are we spending so much money, for example, to maintain bases in Uzbekistan? So decreased military involvement is definitely on the menu worldwide. We're also going to look at, in a sensible, rational, and as painless way as possible, decrease the sheer amount spent on military hardware. That's where the bulk of the defense budget comes from. What have we mentioned so far? Environmental wisdom, grassroots democracy, nonviolence, and the 4th pillar of the party is social justice. A lot of people don't recognize this because they always associate the Green Party and the Green movement with just environmental issues. We have always been about the social justice issues. Petra Kelly, who was one of the founders of the Green Party in West Germany back in 1970, came to America to go to school and got immediately involved in the civil rights movement in the 60s. So that is one of the things that got her into social democratic politics in the first place, and then that clean break she made with the Social Democrats to form the Green Party, which we now know, and which has gone on to tremendous electoral success in Germany. But I digress. When it comes to social justice, we would like to make sure that social justice includes environmental justice. Just to give you one example, we want to take good, long, hard looks at where we dispose of our waste. Why is it that so much of our waste winds up in close proximity to poor neighborhoods with toxic releases of fumes and other nasty stuff near schools in places like the 5th Ward? We have a history of that here in Houston. It's time to put a stop to that. Another one, of course, is just making sure that all interests, the interests of the common people are represented at the political table, so that people can have sufficient self-determination to make themselves a better future. I've heard people complain, just to give you another example, that ever since desegregation in the 50s and 60s, that where African American neighborhoods had their own businesses and their own microeconomies, they no longer have that because those mom and pop businesses have been driven out of business by the invasions of the Burger Kings and the Walgreens. And one of the things that keeps African Americans, Hispanic Americans, and other traditionally disadvantaged groups from developing their own businesses in this nation has been lending practices. There have to be strong laws to make sure that banks and other financial institutions do not redline, in other words, do not make it more difficult for people who don't, traditionally have great amounts of wealth in their families to get a loan to start a business. When you look at some of the disparities in wealth in this country, I'm not talking about income, I'm talking about net value, I'm talking about actual wealth. It's like a ratio of 20 to 1 between European American families and Latino or African American families. That's not going to be solved overnight, but we need to get this nation on track so that we can have greater equality, so that all Americans have an opportunity to benefit from the system that they will participate in creating. My name is David Collins. Once again, I would encourage you to get out and vote in November. Remember that 5% is victory for the Texas Green Party. Especially, do not vote that Democratic straight ticket, tempting as it may be, because Charles Waterbury, who's running without a Democratic opponent for Supreme Court, and Josh Wendell for Railroad Commission would really appreciate it if you took the time to actually X their names and stick it to the Republicans. My email address, if you'd like to communicate with me, is dbc4, that's the number 4, senate@gmail.com. And you can check the webpage www.newmenu.org/David Collins. That's newmenu, NEWMENU.org/David Collins. I'll have a bigger and badder website sometime this summer. Thank you very much for your support.